Okay.
Yeah.
So, hello.
Hello.
To
I'd like to say namaste.
Okay, namaste. So the first part, I guess, would just be to ask you your name and where you are right now.
Um, I have a long name, but I think my official name is L. Sam Sudheer Manickam.
Mhm.
Uh, Depending on where I am, people address me differently. Some people call me Sam, some people call me Sudhir, some people call me Manickam, and there are people who do not know my different different names too. It has its own advantages at the same time disadvantages.
Mhm.
But I'm right now Sam Manickam is the name that I've been using in my uh, official uh, internet communications.
Okay. So is it okay
Uh,
if I call you Sam?
yeah, that's fine. That's fine because people in the West call me Leister. That's the L part of it. So I don't know how it happens. When I give my expansion
Okay.
of the initial as L as Leister, people call me Leister from the West. Uh,
Okay.
Manu- so anyway, you can call me Sam or Leister or whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference to me. That's me.
Okay.
Whatever you call me, I am me. I am what I am. That's a thinking that I have. I
Hmm.
have. Uh, I am a. I was actively working as a professor of clinical psychology uh,
Mhm.
after my master's in psychology, then MPhil in clinical psychology. That's it. Training in India, which qualifies one to practice as a clinical psychologist.
Mhm.
And I worked in different settings. And before I formally retired, I was working as a professor for about 9 years in a medical college.
Oh.
Uh, yeah, and along with that, I had my own private practice also, which I started from 1982 when I passed out of my clinical training.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay. Sorry, just where are you right now? Just
okay. That's also a slightly long story. If
okay.
it's because I'm from Kerala, that's the southernmost state of India,
Mhm.
uh, and I'm also from the southernmost part of the state called Trivandrum.
Mhm.
But I have worked in different states like the neighboring states like Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So after my mass, master level training in psychology, I've moved to Karnataka in Bangalore. I got trained there, and then I moved to Tamil Nadu, a place in a Christian medical college
Hmm.
in Vellore. So I worked from 82 to 87 there, and then I went back to Kerala, and then I came back to Tamil Nadu to Chennai, the capital of Tamil Nadu, and from there I moved to Karnataka, and I was working in a place called Mysuru. Uh, right now I'm back to Vellore, where my daughter is working with the Christian Medical College. So
Hmm.
uh, though I have a base in Trivandrum, I travel from Trivandrum to Calicut, where there's an NGO with which I'm associated, and then to Vellore, where my daughter and my wife with the grandson is there.
Hmm.
Just before the lockdown, I came to Vellore, and I'm actually stuck, practically
Oh.
stuck in Vellore. I didn't move after March 22nd
Hmm.
from Vellore.
Oh.
So that's where
So
I am.
mhm. And not so much by choice, right? At this point.
Yeah, it's not by choice. So as my trainer says, Jerry Cogan says, I have given permission to be not being independent now.
Mm. Yes. Yes. I have not left my house basically since March as well. So I
Mm.
understand. I understand.
Mhm.
So this is interesting because this is really, I think, the first time I've ever spoken with you. I mean, we've been on group meetings before, but
Yeah.
I'm curious, who are you? Who are you as a person, as a human being? And what might some of your values, your qualities, your interests, or your passions be?
Hmm. So you're basically asking about my life.
Your life, your person, however you'd like to answer.
Yeah. So right now I'm more of a grandfather and a trainer
Mhm,
and a therapist at times because I have some online sessions going on, and probably a learner plus teacher because I like teaching as well as learning new things, newer things. Uh, that is, in short, what I am now. I'm also I think I consider myself as a good husband. I don't know whether my wife would agree with that or not, but
I would have to do a separate interview to check that.
um, yeah, and yeah, different roles. Uh,
Mhm,
I was actually involved in the uh, uh, social activities also. So I'm not away from the society or from the field of my profession
mhm,
because I've been actively involved in the profession of psychology, trying to make psychology more popular or more acceptable or more professionalized because I was the secretary of the Indian Association of Clinical Psychologists for 4 years. Uh, and I also made some efforts to make the Gestalt therapy movement forward. So I have made, in fact, one of my trainers used to tell me that I need to take uh, initiative in establishing a association in India, Gestalt Indian Association of Gestalt Therapy. Or I mean, the name is not important, but you need to have an association of Gestalt Therapy in India, which probably can help the Gestalt therapy grow. So that is also part of me, I would say.
okay. Is there anything that comes to mind as a particular value of yours that you are moved by or that you sort of structure yourself around?
Uh, I would, I mean, a lot of things are there being uh, can you a little bit more specific about it, or because when I say about the values, then I need to go to specific values, or could you could you give me some kind of a lead on that?
I mean,
If you, if
some people don't even really think about, what their values are, and some people are really very clear, my life is built around my sense of justice, or I don't know.
okay, no, that way I would say that I'm more concerned about the humanness. Uh,
Mhm.
I would consider being human is more important, which might involve being truthful, being trustful, being just having justice meted out to different people, and also equality also comes in.
Hmm.
So I would probably bringing all those things under the banner of being human.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot
Okay.
of things, I mean, especially because of this, I had the opportunity of seeing through the poverty of people, which
Hmm.
has made me think, why are these people poor? Is it are they destined to be so, or is it somebody else has taken away what is due from for them? Is there something, or when the one side spirituality, the God being loving, caring, but at the same time, why these people are deprived of these things?
Hmm.
Uh, why certain things repeatedly happen, uh, irrespective of people talking about great civilizations or the culture or the traditions that we uphold, but still injustice being meted out to young children, especially girl children, being
Mm.
uh, affected in different ways. I mean, I think so. It comes to me as to who am I responsible for it, or can I do something to help the situation improve?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I mean, that's where probably I come to a phase of impasse where you're sort of stuck uh, different measures, or for example, I have a network of psychologists. We had around 8,000 psychologists in the group, and I was trying to communicate this to the group, saying, is it something that we as a larger community from different parts of India can voice the concern about uh, helping the women or the girl students to uh, ask for their right. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, so it's not just, I mean, just educating the girls may not be sufficient uh, because, the perpetrators are us from the other side. But at the same time, uh, women need to give, or girls need to give the signal that, this is not acceptable from a very young age. So whether the mothers have to start it or the girls have to start it, these are, I mean, so that's where I come, where I say that, the human thing comes uh, to the forefront.
Mm-hmm. So I hear
Yeah,
equality.
yeah, equality in many ways. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
I treat my girl child in a particular way and a boy child in a different way. So that kind of inequality has to come from home, which means that everybody is a human being. I don't know whether it's again relating to the living beings around, which makes a difference. But that also doesn't seem to be helping. There is, animals are considered as god. I mean, like a god by some people of some faith.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, if that gets translated to the human beings could have been valued, should have been valued more. But that
Mm-hmm.
also is not happening. So there is something, uh, I don't know, wrong, but something is there which needs to be addressed. But I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how. So, but that seems to be, that is one of my great concerns, I would say.
Hmm. Okay.
And
I'm
I'm slightly worried whether this pandemic would make things worse, because working with the people who were affected the disasters, we found that the girl children again were more
Mhm.
vulnerable, trafficking, and
Yes.
being in temporary homes, shelter homes, and things, relief camps, etc., were made them more vulnerable. So probably this pandemic also is likely to be affecting them in a different way. Or when I don't want to say them, I would make it as part of me, and
Mm.
how this has to be addressed is very concerned. So you were about to ask me something. Sorry.
No, no, that's fine. I'm
Yeah.
interested in what you're saying. And I like the way that you said that, because it's not that it's affecting another, it's affecting a part of us in a collective.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
think the Gestalt gets affected that way. When I see it from a Gestalt perspective, that's a disconnect that I find, which needs to be made whole. Mm.
Hmm. Okay. So what I was going to ask you is, in your history, in your life, if you identify a particular event or a set of circumstances that you've lived that have shaped or really influenced who you are.
Hmm. There are several of them, but you want me to go in a serial or just one?
No, however you'd like.
Yeah. No, fortunately or unfortunately, I had the opportunity to live in different places, as I've already narrated.
Hmm.
Even within a small district, maybe a small place, I had to live at different places because my father was working in different places. So I had the opportunity to see different people from different walks of life.
Hmm.
Uh, So one of the things was I distinctly remember is the disaster-related work, which as an adolescent I was walking through the side of a river, uh, just seeing how people are affected because there was continuous rain, but that area was not flooded. But
Okay.
we knew that people were moving because it's likely that the river might overflow and their property and houses will be affected. So we are
Mhm.
just walking through a elevated bund, uh, and we just came out of it and we found that the whole area was all covered with water. So it was really not really traumatic. I mean, we were safe, but at the same time, I was worried about, I mean, I was actually traumatized by the people who were affected, and they had all come to the place where we were living. We were living in a large campus because it was a church compound where I was living. So there was a school there, and they all came to the relief camps and providing support to them. Being part. I mean, I was just an adolescent, but I was actually part of giving them food, dress, different kinds of activities. So I think uh, just before that, I was living in a city where with different kinds of comforts. So suddenly shifting from that to this area, which
Mhm.
and also I had lived before that. I've lived in a place where there was not having enough water to drink. We had to
Wow.
we get water once in a week, and we to collect and keep it in a containers for the. We don't know when it would come, but till
Mm.
then we'll have to store water and be there. So from that place to the city and back to a place where it's flood. So
Oh.
it was yeah. So that really has made me change, I would say. And another, maybe as I grew up, I would jump to the attending the Gestalt workshop, which made me probably move to the place where I am right now. So
You mean literally move to a different place or move
move
as a
to what
person?
I am, yeah, as a person that changed me as a person. I mean,
Hmm.
the other thing was developmentally till that time I was experiencing different things, learning different things, but probably what changed was attending the Gestalt workshop where some of the issues that I unfinished business was probably brought forth and worked through, and that made a great difference.
Hmm.
Uh,
Would you
yeah.
like to say how you came to Gestalt? How did you start?
Huh. Um, uh, it's in bits and pieces. I'll try to connect the things together. My first exposure from a theoretical perspective was as a master's student in psychology. Uh, my teacher's friend, Dr. Roland Chinang, he came and gave a lecture on Gestalt therapy, 1 hour lecture on Gestalt therapy. So I was very much fascinated by the concepts of here and now,
Okay.
and not being in the past, not being in the future. That's a quoting which I remember from that time, and I think that made a lot of sense to me. Like being present is more important than worrying about what has happened in the past. So I was curious, and so I bought a book and was reading the Gestalt therapy verbatim by first, and I still remember when others have gone for holidays to their home in the hostel. I was sitting there and reading this book, which made me feel that this is something very interesting. Uh, then after 2 years, when I came to the clinical training, I was asking people about that. Can you help me do this? But nobody was willing to, or probably trained enough to do that. So I experimented on my own. Uh, the two chair, and I think it did. work.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, I was doing on my own, so I don't know whether I'm doing in the proper way or not. But then again, it went on and on, and there was a time when I came an advertisement in one of the International Council of Psychologists newsletter about the Genie Gestalt Education Network International, which is based in Germany, in Frankfurt,
Okay.
which was founded by Jerry Kogan, he's no more, and Willie Kogan,
Mm-hmm.
his wife, Wilton Cross Kogan. So they both were running this Genie. Then I wrote to them. We didn't have emails those days. I wrote to them. I think it was in '87 or '86, and then they sent me a lot of things in German, saying that we don't have we don't have the program in English. We have this program is in German. So if there is something which comes up, they would inform me. And then they continued sending me, but I didn't have the probably resources to go. And
Mm-hmm.
finally, they had some scholarship in '95,
Mm.
in which
So you waited
they
almost
offered.
10 years?
Yeah, more than that. Yeah,
Wow.
from after knowing them, they had come to India. They were in another state. I went to all the way to meet them up. But we didn't have telephone and all those. I mean, as what we have now. So traveled about 18 hours when there. I couldn't find them, but they left the book and they sent me the book which they brought from Germany to me. And but I didn't. I haven't met them. So finally, I met them in Germany in 1995 at their own center in 54 Oberberg, Frankfurt. And Jerry came. I've not met him before. Somebody comes in and say, "What's going on?" Because I was accommodated in their own treatment center, which was fairly large enough where several people could stay there. They had several rooms, so they
Mm-hmm.
accommodated me there. And then I went to France where this workshop was held. So that's how my Gestalt journey started, I would say, in a formal way. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was more of uh, my own effort as well as attending another workshop which we organized in India in Kovalam, near to my place. So they had come there with the German participants. It was truly an international program. We had people from Nigeria also, and that was another uh, landmark, I would say. I think after that, we wanted to. I mean, there weren't enough opportunities to go for further workshops. I got into a regular work, so I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
take time off from the place and attend the workshops. But I was conducting workshops on my own. In fact, one of the participants from Nigeria invited me to conduct a workshop there. So two of us who had participated in the Genie training, we went there and conducted a workshop along with another trainer from France on Karen. So before this itself, I had started conducting workshops on my own, 5 days, 2 days, 5 days, like that. Uh, yeah, that's how it started.
And what is it about Gestalt that caught your interest so deeply? I mean, that sounds like a lot of commitment to to this
Uh,
thing.
uh,
To,
yeah,
and what is it?
in
What is it
between,
that got you so interested or so
interestingly,
excited about it?
yeah, there was one. I was reading through the sermons of my father. My father was a pastor, so he
Okay.
had written several sermons, and I found one sermon which he did in 1956 before I was born. And then reading through that, I realized that there were a lot of Gestalt concepts in that. So I mean, actually, that's what I said. Whether my father influenced me also, I don't know. So to a great extent. but this was something which I shared with different people, and they said in the Gestalt community, they said there is uh, some amount of Gestalt concepts coming in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and a couple of months back, I shared this with Alexandra. I think you may know Alexandra from US. I don't remember
Okay.
she's from
Don't
the
know.
Gestalt Pastoral Care. She's in the
Okay.
AGT interest group, research interest group. She's there, and I
Okay.
met her there actually in the interest group online, and I shared this with her because she said that she's from the GPC, the Gestalt Pastoral Care. I have not heard about that till recently. Then
Mm-hmm.
she sent me a lot of. We had a Zoom session, and she said a lot of insights from the GPC uh, perspective on this sermon. I mean, which I am continuing. I mean, on parallelly, I'm researching on that too. But what I meant is, that also had probably contributed me coming into the Gestalt
Mm-hmm.
world. Uh, Another aspect was my own doctoral research on psychotherapy.
Okay.
This I initiated before 92. Uh, because my question was, I have been trying to help people providing therapy, and they change. And I was not knowing what's happening with them. How they are being, they're changing. Is it a behavioral approach,
Mm-hmm.
or is it a, because some of them I did provide behavioral approach from
Okay.
a cognitive approach, psychodynamic approach. Some of them are changing from a spiritual perspective also. So what
Mm-hmm.
is this that is changing people was something which made me curious to know as to is there a particular can I name it? Because I was,
Mm-hmm.
from what I knew of the Gestalt, I didn't want to call it as Gestalt approach at that time.
Okay.
But I shared my thesis, a copy of my thesis with Jean Willie at that time, and she went through that and said that it looks like a Gestalt.
Mm.
Because I've mentioned about the different concepts of Indian thought in it, uh, to to make it more clear, I would say that the Indian thought talks about uh, the person, or the Sanskrit term is Atman and Brahman.
Okay.
Atman, I would perceive it as being related to the person, and the Brahman, the universe. And there is a great connection between this Atman and the Brahman,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you want to connect in or understand it in a Gestalt perspective, can be called as a Gestalt, a larger Gestalt,
Mm-hmm.
beyond the Gestalt what we read from the textbook, etc., etc.
Okay.
So the change happens because of working at different levels, whether it is at the body level or whether it's at the psychophysiological level. If I have to use the original terms, I should be using Annamaya Kosha or Pranamaya Kosha or Manomaya Kosha or Vijnanamaya Kosha or the Anandamaya Kosha, which can be more or less translated as the body level or the psychophysical level or the psychological or the sensational level, the intellectual level or the cognitive level, and the spiritual level.
Hmm.
So
Now
all
I
the
want to
the
go and learn more about all of this. I'm sorry that I have
uh,
nothing to say, but
yeah, so all these five components are there, not just the body mind
mm-hmm.
or the body mind soul, which we usually is discussing in the Western literature.
Okay.
So this, I think, is something which needs to be. I feel it needs to be explored, because body and mind, the Western psychology or the Western understanding do not have a problem. And now with the yoga coming up, I think the pranayama or the psychophysical is also getting more important. And the GPC, Gestalt Pastoral Care, is taking care of the spiritual aspects of it. And we have the cognitive people who talk about the, changing the cognition, thoughts, etc. from the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So there seems to be a kind of a connect between what we see in the Western therapeutic world, which is a Gestalt, and we see a parallel in the Indian psychological concept, which is beyond the person, which is connecting to the universe. But it is hard. For example, the importance of climate change affecting the person. Of course, that also is connected with the Gestalt. We don't talk about person without the field or without the environment. So whatever is there in the environment affects the person. But there is a clearly it is stated how these things are connected. But we don't have any experimental evidence, or to say that okay, this is how it is. From a research perspective, one can't say this is how it is related or how it is. This is something which I hope the newer Gestalts would take on and research and explore further on it.
Okay, so what have you done with Gestalt? I mean, you said you wrote your doctoral thesis. It was not about Gestalt. So have you been practicing, teaching? Have you been researching? What have you been doing with Gestalt?
Yeah, I've been trying to use these concepts in my Gestalt therapy work also. Because when for example, if I suppose the person's conflict is in the spiritual area, so that spiritual conflict is arising from a particular because of a guilt or a shame, which is again related to the introducts which the person is having, which may have to be removed, not just making the person aware of it. Maybe he needs to explore it from his or her faith orientation, which is very much part of the person.
Okay. So you've kind of been doing earlier, integration and.
Yeah, earlier I would say that okay, can I encourage a person to pursue the spiritual path and see whether that can be his or her unfinished business or disturbance can be worked out or not. But I think there is one doesn't have to keep that aside, but that doesn't mean that I have to put my faith on the other person or my faith orientation on the other person. Probably encouraging the person to explore his spiritual path might help him to become aware of what he is and what he has, or which direction he needs to take to move forward. Did I don't know whether I answered you.
Yeah, no, very much. I mean, I'm just curious how you've integrated and developed and what you've been doing. Another question that I did have is, I mean, either within Gestalt or in other parts of your life, if there is a person who you would say has really influenced you.
I would first of all say that my father had a great influence on me. As I said, that he was a pastor and he had taken me during his home visits to his parishioners. I used to accompany him as a child. So I used to see him, listening to people, addressing their issues, whether it's economical issues or whether it is educational issues or bringing them up. I mean, one of the things he had I mean, he had probably was a therapist also, because I remember he attending to people who are dissociated, people with the possession. I've gone with him to see what it is, and I'm now, after knowing GPC, I don't know whether he was probably providing from a gestalt perspective, as trying to providing the care what is
Right.
needed for them from a psychological perspective also, rather than just teaching or I mean, some rather than giving the sermon or
Mm-hmm.
praying for them. So that I think had a great influence on me. But maybe by when I was 16, he passed away. So I had that vacuum. Uh, so he had a great influence on me. In fact, even this, I mean, I had asked him once. He was a pastor who's been giving the sermon and all, but I asked him, "What if I go to a temple? How do you feel about it?" He said that if that's your faith is, you may go ahead. So he didn't say that I'm a pastor and you cannot do this or do that. I was just I think I must have been 12 or 13 at that time. And then I
Mm-hmm.
found that the literature which I talked about, these are all from the Upanishads, which referred to, which are all in his library. So when I was discussing with different people on how this is happening, is it how this gestalt is formed, or how we can make people, or what makes people move, uh, that time when some of them suggested that this is there in the Indian thoughts, you need to refer to that. Then I found that in his library, which we preserved even after his death, these books were there, which made me feel that probably I had inherited some of those concepts. I don't know. So at times I used to wonder whether if Fritz had been to India, he would have probably had incorporated some of these concepts as Jung had done.
Mm-hmm.
Jung, if you know, had also taken concepts like mandalas and things like that into his theory, which has come from the koshas of the Upanishads, specifically the Taittiriya Upanishads. Indian psychologists have also worked on it.
Okay.
Uh, so it's very difficult for me to pinpoint a person. For example, there's a person by name Ramachandra Rao. He had written about the Indian concept of person, as well as he has talked about the gestalt in Indian thought. Okay. And he is referring to what has been to the literature, what has happened in 200 BC.
Okay.
And he is talking about, he has referred to the verbal gestalt, not the perceptual gestalt, but the verbal gestalt.
Mm-hmm.
The verbal gestalt is, that's where I connect with the Indian thought and the gestalt. So when we talk about the verbal gestalt, the words, for example, words and the meaning comes. The word see, when I say, what comes to your mind, or what comes up when I say see?
When you say sea, like as in
Yeah,
water or as in sea?
yeah. Now I say oh.
You say O. Okay, I see a letter O. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I say W.
I see a W.
Yeah, okay. Now, if I say the three sounds together,
Mm-hmm.
it is COW.
Right.
And what do you make out of it now?
I eventually get a cow.
How? So, which has got a different meaning for people in different continents.
Okay.
Or, I mean, so that's a verbal gestalt which is talked about in ancient literature, which I don't think people have explored further or researched
Okay.
further. Whether how that, so probably in therapy also the same thing happens. Uh, this is called as in Sanskrit it's called as sphoda, but it's originating from the term foot, or that's the original, which means that it's a bursting or appearing suddenly, or
Okay.
the aha experience which one gets. So I'm not aware, because in Indian context when we work, we may not have to have several sessions with some people. It's just one
Okay.
session where this thing happens.
Hmm.
The the spota
Where
happens,
where
or
where the cow appears?
no, not the cow. The
No, no,
suddenness with no the
no,
suddenness with
I
which
mean,
people no the suddenness with which people are able to make meaning out of
right.
their life.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
what
I'm
it's
not
referring.
making fun. I'm being
Okay, okay,
serious.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like
Okay,
when all of the
yeah.
pieces come together and
Yeah,
boom,
like
all of a
that. Yeah,
sudden.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So people have a different perspective of life when they realize it's cow, not C or O or
I will
something else.
remember you forever. You're the first person who's done an experiment in the middle of an interview, and now I will always remember the cow.
Oh,
So, okay.
yeah.
But yes.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And I'm wondering now as I'm listening to you and I'm hearing all of these concepts that I have no idea about. I mean, my original studies were in Latin American culture and social anthropology. Um, but I have no cultural references for Indian thought, for Indian concepts, for the things that you're telling me about. And I'm wondering how that is for you to have all of this experience and all of this formation. Do you run into most people not having any idea what you're talking about in Gestalt
Yeah.
circles?
Yeah. That is one difficulty or challenge, I would say. See, when you talk about, see now when we do the gestalt with different groups, some of them say, "Oh, are you talking about the Buddhist concept of mindfulness?" Or they relate to some of the Indian thoughts which they are
Mm-hmm.
familiar with. But again, the Indian thought as such is not just one.
No, no, I understand you're talking about a very deep philosophical, theological, multi-level tradition. I mean,
I'm
I
also talking
understand
about
there's a
different schools of thought,
whole lot. Yes.
different schools of thought. That's what I was
Mm-hmm.
referring to. Because
Okay.
the Buddhistic concept is one way of seeing it. The Jain view is a different one. So if I say all as Indian thought, it creates problems. So I need to be
Mm-hmm.
specific as to whether I'm talking from the yogic school of thought or Upanishadic
Okay.
school of thought, or even if I say Upanishad, it's better that I say it's from the Taittiriya Upanishad or the specific Upanishad. So
Okay.
but otherwise, it's as you said, people can get lost in a big forest. You don't know which way to go, or you don't know whether to come out, or you may, if you know that this is what is there, you may not want to go in either.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to be very specific guideline as to where you have to go, and one has probably one has the option to choose different uh, sector also. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably the beauty of it. If you want to be purely a materialistic person, there are thoughts which is related to that too.
Okay.
So now that you asked me, I had while attending the first workshop, there was one German therapist in training. He's by the almost end of the workshop, he said that he would like to have a session with me.
Mm-hmm.
He would like to have a gestalt session. He wanted to know how an Indian therapist would work. I don't know I don't remember exactly whether he wanted to know how a gestalt Indian would work or Indian gestalt therapist would work. But he scheduled a session and we had a session. By the end of it, he said that you are bloody well like a Western therapist. I
Hmm.
said I am like that because of the Indian thought. Because the Indian
Okay.
thought gives you the freedom, the flexibility to move to the way one is. So I may not handle this particular issue which you brought it, the challenge that you brought it, the way I had dealt with now with you, but I may deal in a different way than with another person from India or from
Mhm.
North India or South India or different cultural
Right.
setup. It's a great challenge to know the culture, but maybe what I'm trying to say is that that flexibility is there within the Indian thought. I think that's something which is common in Gestalt too. So I'm not too rigid in the Gestalt approach, wherein the different philosophies, different things are integrated in. That's what we did in India when we did the workshop, where the Genie did a workshop. We had integrated the Ayurveda and yoga into it. So in the morning, or getting the body rejuvenated is very much that of Gestalt. And the diet one has also very much of Gestalt because we are addressing to the taking care of the body.
Hmm.
And I mean, the style of living, everything is probably related to the Gestalt that we talk about.
Hmm. Okay. And you mentioned just now the word challenges. So I'm wondering
Yeah.
what you identify specifically as a challenge for yourself within Gestalt.
Huh. Uh, in the practice of Gestalt therapy or
In
in
the
propagating
practice
Gestalt
or
therapy?
either?
Yeah, in the practice, see, this is one thing I think I'm curious to know because many people, as part of their curriculum, who are therapists, learn about the Gestalt concepts, Gestalt school of
Right.
thought.
Hmm.
As I have used, I do not know how many of them are using in their practice the Gestalt concepts.
Okay.
They may not be purely a Gestalt therapist, but a lot of things would come in their practice. So that is something which I would like to explore further. Whether there is some kind of a Gestalt, what amount of Gestalt is being used in uh, by the therapists in India now. One of the research
Okay.
challenges. Second challenge
I mean,
is
is that something like the applying the fidelity scale that Madeline Fogarty developed?
uh, that I don't know whether that would help. Maybe we need to know what the therapists do. That's what I said. If we have a recording of the sessions of the therapist, we know, okay, this
Hmm.
component is more of a gestalt, not the person is a psychotherapist, yes, but gestalt is predominantly there in the session, not
Okay.
cognitive or uh,
Okay.
behavioral approach, so
Hmm.
or psychodynamic approach or psychoanalytical approach. So that is something which I think needs to be done, but I don't know whether it's possible or not. Second
Okay.
challenge is suppose if I've been uh, most of the workshops I've conducted, I've got good feedback from the participants about the
Hmm.
workshop. Uh, but when I tell them that if you want to become a Gestalt therapist, this years of training is needed. That's putting off a lot of people away from Gestalt. So
Okay.
that is something which I'm working on now. I've
Mhm.
actually developed a tool to see, what is the kind of a training expectations people have. Just now,
Okay.
I've launched it. Maybe one
I've
of
heard
the
about
things
that.
of huh?
I've heard about that.
Okay. The COVID, I think, is making me do that.
The COVID we do it.
Otherwise, maybe I not have thought of doing that. Though I've discussed with different groups of people and starting this program at different places, whether it could be 1 year program or a 2 year program or a 4 year program, because EAGT wants a 4 year program.
Hmm.
Uh, so, but I think so that is another challenge, the training input, and to certify somebody as a gestalt therapist. What I
Hmm.
realize from the gestalt community is that there are a good number of people who have been trained as therapists, not as psychologist therapists.
Right.
They need not be they need not have a psychology background to become a therapist.
I don't.
Which,
I may not be
yes,
a good example, but I'm one of
yeah,
them.
yeah. So that, but when people have inputs in psychology, should we make them work through the 4 years
Mm-hmm.
to get certified as a Gestalt therapist? Uh, is one thing which one challenge that I have. Uh,
Mm.
I am aware that though I had training at various levels, and even now I think I am a student in Gestalt therapy. I learn more and more things. So that way, I think a longer period is definitely needed. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know whether people have that kind of a motivation or zeal to be in Gestalt therapy unless we give them kind of a short-term workshops or short-term program to make them get into the Gestalt work. The other challenge is the
Mm-hmm.
cultural issue. Because one of the issue is the one-to-one relationship, or the co-creation. The
Right.
therapist at the upper level, and the client or the other person. I don't want to say even client. I don't. The other person at a lower level is something which has been there with this model of therapy, client, or
Okay.
different kinds of things, or very difficult to change that because people inherit different things of different values of not considering people as equal.
Okay.
So I may not want a female therapist to take the role of a independent role if I am a person who do not value consider them as equal.
Mm.
I think in society in general, I don't find that there is much of a change among the therapists also. I don't have research evidence to say that, but generally the gender divide is quite evident. So
Mm-hmm.
unless people have that kind of a willingness to work on an equal frame,
Mm-hmm.
that will remain a challenge.
Hmm.
So
I mean,
that is.
that's actually another slightly more personal question that I did have, which is, you mentioned, the girl children and the experience of women um, culturally in India, and I'm wondering how you understand yourself as a man, how you understand your identity, your gender, your masculinity. I mean, even as a therapist, but as a person.
Hmm. I don't know how to answer that, but I think I consider people as people, not as based on the gender. But
Okay.
many times when I ask these questions, to the different groups I address, I ask them who is more responsible for the gender divide. Uh, I had the opportunity of helping my mother even from my school days. So, which is not the case with used to be. Now
Mm-hmm.
things are changing, but generally, there are roles which are assigned to the girl children, the boy children from very young day. Broom the house or clean the house. The girls can help the mother in the kitchen, but the boys are not allowed to. So if the daughter-in-law asks, if I am a mother-in-law and if I ask my daughter-in-law, if my daughter-in-law asks my son to cook in the kitchen, that's very offensive, or it cannot be done. So it
Mm-hmm.
cannot be done. So the daughter-in-law has to take the brunt of doing all those things. So it's all coming from the woman again. Allowing the son to take an upper hand over the daughter-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
though she is a woman who has to be respected or who has her own individuality. So that's how I mean, these are some of the, I don't know whether I'm making it more clear or not. So I would say that I would stand. I would not. I do not want to support that kind of a thing. In fact, my
Okay.
grandson, 4-year-old, says that boys will be together and girls will be together, and you are not. You are a girl. You are not supposed to do that. We don't have that kind of a discrimination. But still, he has picked it up from somewhere. I don't know from where he had picked it up. He's only 4 years, where he's saying
Mm-hmm.
that this only boys can do it, and girls cannot do it. That kind of a divide here it has come.
Mm-hmm.
Irrespective of we can at home not discriminating things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether I answered your question, but this is
Yeah,
what
no,
is.
I mean, I'm just curious of how, because you talked about, the other people, and I was curious about your experience of yourself.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, I think you're pretty clear about, how you see things and what you choose to do with your own self and your power. So that sounds
yeah.
clear. And mhm, go
No,
ahead.
I can be on my own because I don't have any restriction that this should be done by this person or women or men or I don't mind doing any kind of a job which usually prescribed as the uh, men's role or women's role, etc. In day-to-day course.
Hmm,
Yeah.
okay. So another term that you mentioned, you said something about in the Gestalt community. So I'm wondering if you feel part of a Gestalt community, what that means to you.
Gestalt. Probably I was in the AGT in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I met for the first time the Gestalt community, and where I had an exposure to a number of Gestalt therapists from different parts of India, parts of the world,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which I didn't have the exposure before. So I didn't know. Uh, Many people, I think, have an opportunity to interact with other Gestaltians, trainers, etc., during the formative periods of training, which I
Right.
didn't have. So I
Right. It
realized
was
this.
you in a book, right? That
Yeah,
was.
you me and the book and couple of trainers, maybe Terry Kogan and Willie and Peter Cole
Mhm.
from US or Yarrow from Australia. It
Okay.
was limited in that circle, and books. Yeah, so
Mm.
knowing that community was really helpful in the different perspectives people hold and the different work people hold and how the potential of expanding the Gestalt approach,
Hmm.
which I learned during that time. And I was also talking about the GPC approach, which again I've come to know because of the Gestalt community. Yeah.
Okay. So another question would be how you feel that Gestalt has affected you as a person.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. You mean the Gestalt concepts or Gestalt process or?
Any aspect of it. I mean, some people it's the training, the relationships, the concepts. It, however,
Hmm.
whatever part of it has touched you.
No, I I do not know. People perceive me as a very cool and calm person,
Okay.
and I had got the feedback that I take things. Uh, uh, and in fact, my wife says that I don't get shaken up easily by things around. So I think Gestalt has a great influence in that, seeing where I am now, what I am now.
Hmm.
And I feel that it has a great impact on me. Whether, again, when I say Gestalt, I include the spirituality also as part of the Gestalt.
Okay.
I'm not keeping spirituality apart from Gestalt to say that I am what I am or, how I've been influenced by just, when I say the Gestalt has influenced me, I include the spiritual dimension also into it.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Another question that I have, sort of on the other side of the challenges. would be what you feel has been one of the most significant moments or one of your greatest memories or experiences around Gestalt. It can be in a
Uh,
clinical or in a training or whatever comes to mind.
it was a training actually. Uh, I had conducted training workshops several times, but one of the workshops I met with a group who are all disintegrated, I would say. I mean, they were not even talking to each other, etc., etc. And after the workshop, usually people give some kind of a verbal. I mean, I ask for one word or
Mm-hmm.
feedback about the whole thing. So that group didn't say anything,
Oh,
but they just gave me a book, a spiral bound book, which had the responses, which is very much rewarding. So that probably that's what made me feel that I am a Gestalt therapist worth nurturing further.
okay.
So that was a very touchy moment, I would say. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. And I think really the last question that I have is what's next? I mean, what is you've talked about, integrating and training and what is next for you within Gestalt and what do you think could be next for Gestalt in the world that we're in right now?
Yeah. I probably would say three things. First thing is regarding the training. I've already initiated discussions with different groups of people within India where this can be launched. So we might come up with a 1 year program, depending on based on the survey that we get, because some groundwork has been done to start a program in India and see how it goes. During the AGT meeting, I also met with a couple of therapists who were interested in coming for training, but uh, I don't know whether this group will be able to afford their requirements unless some bursaries come in from some other source. So that is
Mm-hmm.
one thing. Uh, Second thing is uh, we have people trained at different levels at different people. So 2 years back, we started thinking of having an association of the Gestalt interest group,
Okay.
so that we can network among ourselves and be connected or share information. And I've also started a network of Gestalt International, wherein some of the international participants or trainers who are interested in the Indian group can also join. So through that, we would probably share things and grow, make the Gestalt therapy in India move further.
Hmm.
Internationally, what I found is now I'm yet to know what is coming out of the research conference at the Hamburg one. The proposals are yet to come. I mean, you are aware of that. I do not know whether in what direction the research is taking place, because the scientific world demands research evidence. But
Mm-hmm.
if you ask me whether I would conduct the session if somebody is recording it the same way I would do, I don't know. I don't know. It is. I mean, one never knows what comes up. So
Mm-hmm.
it becomes the real research which is specified whether it can happen in gestalt therapy or not is also uh, slightly debatable. But I think parts of it can be researched. So when you do the parts research, whether it gives the whole or not, I don't know. So that
That's
is
true.
the third aspect. I would also like to add that I'm becoming more aware that there is people of different orientation or different schools of gestalt therapy are also coming up. Whether a, a, that's a result of the growth of gestalt therapy, or whether that's a natural course gestalt therapy may go through. I don't know whether. I think we need to, when I say we, the Gestalt therapy as a community need to be aware of it and address that issue. Otherwise, it may, the possibility of disintegration also may appear. That's what I feel.
Mm. That's interesting. I don't think anyone has framed it quite that way, but yes, that's that's interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
so is there anything else that you would like to add, either about your person or any final thoughts at this point?
I know I would like to thank you, Hita, for taking this initiative and reaching out to me. And I didn't know I found that I've met you earlier during the Toronto conference. You had sent
Yes.
me asking me to send a video, but I was hesitant at that time. I think now you are successful and you are successful. I mean, I wish you success in the endeavor that you have taken up. My
Thank you.
thought is that there is a scope for research in what you're doing. I think if some thematic analysis of the videos can be done from different continents, you have got videos from different continents. I think that would be a wonderful way of integrating the Gestalt from different continents and the communities, which may help us to stay united.
Hmm.
You and your team, I think, Kimberly is also involved. So I wish you all
Yes.
success, and I wish
Okay.
the Gestalt therapy community to grow further.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much for your time. If that's okay with you, we will
Yeah.
leave it here.